Hello everyone and welcome to this amazing episode of ours. It is a very nice episode that we will be discussing an important subject after we have discussed this paragraph in the last subject, blood returns and how it goes with the heart. Today we will be doing the same thing but with not doing the drawing, because drawing is taking a lot of energy and time. So drawing the heart is not easy. Therefore, this will have to be delayed. Let's go today and read this paragraph, this amazing, beautiful paragraph. Later, now, some might ask, instead of a drawing, what should we do? Should we not do anything and leave? No, of course, we will do something. It's called ALS. It's a sign language that many people use, and it's very important and educational. And therefore we will be studying it. For now, let's read this paragraph, and shortly we'll give you this opportunity and bonus episode of teaching and learning this new language. Anyways, the general arrangement of the heart, chambers and great vessels. Again, the general arrangement of the heart chambers and great vessels. And as we speak, we will understand what is in it. What is in this subject of ideas and new methods of learning. So please, as you will read and hear, we will be applying in our educational lesson. Again, the general arrangement of the heart chambers and great vessels. Here we have the heart chambers, general arrangement, atria, aorta, heart apex. The four chambers of the heart are conventionally referred to as the right and the left atria and ventricles. Again, the four chambers of the heart are conventionally referred to as the right and left atria and ventricles. This is the right atrium, this is the right ventricle, this is the left atrium, and this is, of course, the left ventricles. So this is right, and this is right. And it's very counterintuitive because this is supposed to be the left, but of course it is all according to the patient, not according to the dentist. However, the nomenclature does not reflect their true position in the heart, as it lies in the chest. However, this nomenclature does not reflect their true position in the heart. Speaking of the aorta and the ventricles, as it lies in the chest, and this is the chest. Let's change the color. This is the chest, and this is the heart inside it. Let's continue. There is a figure showing that the right side of the heart is in fact anterior to the left side. If this is the heart, then the right side of the heart is anterior to the left side. So it looks bigger in perspective. The right side of the heart is formed by the right atrium with the superior and inferior vena cava. This is the right side of the heart. Again, the right side is formed by the right atrium. So this is the right atrium, and it has superior and inferior vena cava. Superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. Returning deoxygenated blood as the right atrium from the head. Returning deoxygenated blood to the right atrium from the head, neck, arms, and the lower body. Superior and inferior vena cava. As can be seen in figure, I don't discuss figures in this lecture. They enter the right atrium from the aspects that their name suggests. We have another figure showing the position of the right atrioventricular tricuspid valve. I will draw it here. The right atrioventricular tricuspid valve, separating the right atrium from the right ventricle. It is almost vertically behind the lower end of the sternum. It is almost vertically behind the lower end of the sternum, such that the right ventricle lies to the left of the right atrium. So if we imagine that the right ventricle, this one, the right ventricle here, lies to the left, here this way, to the right atrium. So this one will be here, this is the right atrium, and this is the right ventricle. Let's complete. The right ventricle usually lies centrally when the heart is viewed from the front, and therefore we draw it to the center of the heart, the right ventricle. Blood leaves the right ventricle superiorly through the pulmonary valve and flows into the pulmonary circulation through the pulmonary trunk, which splits into the right and left pulmonary arteries. A short course, they supply the corresponding lungs. Let's draw them. This is the pulmonary trunk from the ventricle. Of course, this is the heart, amazing heart, as you can see. This is the aorta, ventricle. And here we can see the pulmonary artery going to the lungs from the right ventricle. And the pulmonary trunk splits to the right and left. Here is the left one, the left pulmonary trunk, and the right pulmonary trunk before entering the lungs. And they supply the right lung and the left lung. This is, let's draw them. This is the left lung. Of course, the left lung is a little bit smaller than the right lung. This is the right lung. And this is where they go. This is the right and left pulmonary arteries. After a short course, they supply the corresponding lungs. Let's finish this paragraph. After gaseous exchange in the lung, oxygenated blood returns from the lungs via the 4 pulmonary veins to the left atrium situated on the posterior side of the heart. So there is a posterior side of the heart, there is an aorta, we call it the left aorta, and there is 4 veins, 1, 2, 3, and 4 veins. After gaseous exchange, the lungs, oxygenated blood returns from the lungs via 4 pulmonary veins to the left atrium, situated on the posterior side of the heart. We can say that this is posterior side and this the right side is anterior there. That's complete. The vessels can be seen in the figure. Internally, the left and right atria are separated by the atrial septum. Here we can see a septum separating the 2 valves, the 2 chambers of the heart, called the atrial septum. Not the aortic septum, the atrial septum, from the word aorta, atrium. I don't know why they don't call the ventricular septum, but looks like they are separating only the atria. And if they go to the downstairs of the heart, they will be called the right and left ventricles. That's why we will be calling them, or calling the wall, the ventricular septum. Blood passes from the left atrium through the left atrioventricular mitral valve to the left ventricles, which lies posterior to the right ventricle. And of course, the mitral valve is a tricuspid valve. Here, there is passing from the atria to the left ventricle, oxygenated blood, of course, as we know, to the left ventricle, which lies posterior to the right ventricle. And here, if we can imagine a 3D image of the heart, we can see this is anterior, a little bit anterior, but not a little bit posterior, and this is posterior ventricle. Or we can see this is posterior, and this is anterior ventricle. So the most posterior is the right atrium, the least we have to imagine the heart very quickly in order to understand what's going on here. So this part is anterior, and this left part is actually posterior. But most posteriorly is the right atrium. Again, the right atrium is the most posterior one. I will repeat that. The most posterior one is the right atrium. And here we can see the left ventricle, which lies posterior to the right ventricle. The 2 ventricles are separated by internal fold, and the blood passes from the atrium to the left atrioventricular valve to the left ventricle, which lies posterior to the right ventricle. So everyone is lying posterior. This is the right ventricle, and this is the left ventricle, which is posterior. This is posterior, and this is anterior, which lies posterior to the right ventricle. The two ventricles are separated internally from each other by the interventricular septum. So we used to say there is the atrial septum, and here we can see there is interventricular septum. So there is the atrial septum, and this is the interventricular septum. Blood leaves the left ventricle via the aortic valve. Of course, the aorta is the biggest vessel, or the greatest one, going to the left ventricle. To enter systolic circulation via the aorta, which runs first upward and then curves backward over the bifurcation of the pulmonary trunk. Note the relative position of the two major arteries. The aorta lies to the right of the pulmonary trunk. This is the pulmonary trunk, and the aorta lies to the right, meaning here, this is the aorta, and this is the pulmonary trunk. If we want to see here, we can see this is the aorta lying to the right of the pulmonary trunk. Of course, this is right and this is left. The cusps of the valves between the atria and ventricles and the ventricle, between the atria and the ventricles, here we can see atria, ventricles, and between pulmonary ventricles, this is ventricles, and pulmonary and aortic trunk. This is ventricle and pulmonary trunk, and this is ventricle and aortic trunk, arranged so that the flow of blood can only take place in desired destination. I think this is enough for this lecture today, and we will be completing the next paragraph here, the next lecture. Hopefully we will be learned our lessons from how to draw the heart, and we will be drawing it very carefully, of course. And but now we can see this picture. It's an amazing picture. Superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, of course supplying the right atrium. Here is the right atrium and the right auricle. Then we have the right pulmonary artery. The right pulmonary artery going to the upper atrial our left atrium. Then we have the arch of the aorta going to the left ventricle. On the right ventricle here, we can see. I think there's a mistake. This is not the right ventricle. This is actually the left ventricle. Then this is actually the left ventricle. Maybe there is no mistake. There's a drawing here. It's very misguiding. You can see that if you focus, you can see that the left ventricle is all very, very posterior, and the right ventricle is very anterior. That's why we have to know this one is anterior and this one is posterior. Then we have the left auricle. Don't ask me what is the left auricle. I don't know really what is it. And then we have the left pulmonary artery. This is the left pulmonary artery going to the atrium. In the next picture, we have a very nice picture here showing us the arch of the aorta and the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and the left atrium. This time it's a posterior view of the heart, as we can see here. Of course, next we have the right ventricles, etc. And as we have promised you, we will continue our lesson, and we will do something very interesting. It is a very nice language, and it is very well used. It's called the sign language, and everyone in the world uses it. Let's go ahead and know what's going on with this language. And hopefully, we will be learning something about the heart and how it's functioning. Also, we can articulate the heart and even show how people can sign language the heart. Content, we have preface. In the preface, we have a small hand gesture here going in circle. Then the introduction, of course, the hands are going up. Or please do that as we do, and practice with us so that we can understand how can you apply it in your real life. How to use this dictionary. This is a sign on how to use. You put your hand on another hand, then you squeeze and make a gesture in the hand. One hand sign, two hand sign, and we have index of English glosses. In the index of English glosses, we have them in holding her hand, and then at last we have the acknowledgements. Acknowledgements is like, what can I say? If you focus here, you can see that there is some kind of hand gesture going on in this way and form, and that the hand is giving and flying in the mouth, saying that we acknowledge you, We acknowledge you. We know that you are an amazing person. Please do this hand gesture with us so that you can understand how can you make it. And of course, we need to apply it in the real life. Then we have a preface. Here we have the preface, and it is 2 hands squeezing the thumb and the index finger. Of course, there is the index finger, there is the middle finger showing upward, and there is the ring finger showing downward. Also with the pinky finger or little finger. And as a preface, we can see that the American Sign Language hand shape dictionary departs from the most sign language dictionaries in that it is organized by the various shapes of the hands. It's used to form sign language rather than English alphabetical words. Order, this unique format allows users to search for signs that they recognize by those meaning that have forgotten, or for the meaning of new signs that have seen for the very first time. American Sign Handshake Dictionary will be especially helpful to the new sign language students, and it will be a handy reference for the people who know some signs but want to increase their vocabulary. The dictionary will also be valuable to deaf people who want to know the various English words that are used in to signify the same concept conveyed in a particular sign. Finally, the index of English glosses provides an English to American Sign Language ASL listening of all the signs of the book, so that new signers can look up a word in English to learn the conceptually correct sign to use to express a specific idea. This dual language feature enables users to go from ASL to English or English to ASL easily and quickly. This page intentionally left blank. And by the way, everyone who is watching and listening to this amazing lecture of ASL, I want to tell you that please don't only listen to our broadcast, but please also watch it at the same time, because this will make you understand it better. Introduction is American is a visual gesture living language. It is a natural language, meaning that it has developed naturally over time by its user. Deaf people ASL has all the features of any language. That is, it is a rule-given system using symbols to represent meanings. In ASL, the symbols are specific, and movements and configurations that are modified by facial expressions. To convey meaning, these gestures or symbols are called signs. Contrary to the common belief, ASL is not delivered or derived from any spoken Latin language, nor it is a visual code representing English. It is a unique and distinct language, one that does not depend on the speech or sound. ASL has its own grammar, sentence, construction, idiomatic usage, slang, style, and regional variations. The characteristics that define any language, American Sign Language. And by the way, this is a characteristic of this language. Anyways, moving on. American Sign Language is the third language that unites deaf people in what is known as a deaf community. Deaf with a capital D is used in publications to recognize the cultural and linguistic affiliations of deaf people who are members of the deaf community, whereas deaf with a lowercase d is used to refer to deaf people who do not embrace ASL or involve themselves with values, organizations, and events that are heralded by signing deaf people. The deaf community is not bound by geographic borders, but rather comprises those people who elect to become members by using ASL as their preferred mode of communication and by accepting the cultural identity of deaf people. It is difficult to give an accurate number of how many people are in the deaf community because census takers typically lump together all people who have hearing loss. Many researchers believe that approximately 10% of those general population has some degree of hearing loss, and that 1% of that number represent deaf people for a total of about 500,000 people in the deaf community. And this is a very unfortunate number. I do not understand why only 1% of deaf people speak this amazing language. 1% of number of deaf. And 10%, many researchers believe that approximately 10% of the general population has some degree of hearing loss. Okay. 1% of the number represent the deaf people, for total about 500,000 people in the deaf community. This is interesting, but I don't know why. Although the ASL should be a very popular language, as I have done my research and I have known that ASL should be very popular indeed between deaf people, but I guess many other languages like Chinese and other communication languages is being used worldwide. That is why ASL, although very popular but not very used widely in the deaf people community worldwide. Moving on to the next paragraph. The people most likely to be native users of ASL are those who have deaf parents. People who lose their hearing as infants. Before they begin to speak, many become native singers. If they are exposed to ASL at any early stage, these people who are unable to hear English and learn it naturally must be taught English through formal means. Hearing children of deaf parents also require ASL as a first language. However, their inculturation tends to cross the culture however, their inculturation tends to cross the cultures of deaf and hearing worlds. These children, like their deaf community counterparts, are often referred to as bicultural and bilingual. Introduction: History of Sign Language in America. Not much is known about deaf people who came to America before the beginning of the 19th century, although evidence suggests that they brought the sign languages of their native countries with them because there were no schools specifically for them, and traveling was difficult. Deaf people probably had very little contact with one another. And by the way, we are doing this because it's supposed to be the most famous language in the world. The ASL, the most famous sign language in the world. And I think Chinese sign language is more widely used, but still, I think ASL is more and has a very increasing number of followers. This is why we are reading it and trying to understand it instead of British Sign Language. This situation began to change in the early 1800s when Thomas Hopkins heralded and connectorate Graham Clergyman embarked on voyage aboard at the request of a powerful physician who had a deaf daughter. Gallaudet had heard that successful methods of educational deaf children were beginning used in Europe. Successful methods. And he was eager to learn these teachings methods and bring them back to America. So that he could open a school for children who were deaf. After a lukewarm welcome by the administrators of the School of the Deaf in England, Gaudet moved on to the Royal Institution for the Deaf in Paris, where he had well received history, French, science, and methods of teaching deaf children using sign language. When Gaudet was ready to return to Hartford, he contracted with Laurent Clerc, a graduate of the Royal Institution and one of the best teachers of the school in Paris, to return with him to America. Clerc played an important role in the emergence of early versions of ASL by bringing French Sign Language to the United States to intermingle with the existing sign language. Gaudet, and Clerc established the first permanent school for deaf children in the United States. The school opened in Hartford, Connecticut in in 1817. This event is viewed as a milestone for the deaf community, that it brought large numbers of deaf people together for the first time. This school became a forum of sharing ideas, experiences, beliefs, and values unique to deaf life. The founding of the school helped create, develop, and nurture the enduring sense of community. American Sign Language formed a fusion between sign languages already existing, including the newly important and improved French Sign Language. Did what most language do? It evolved. It was flexible enough to be able to respond to the ever-changing American society. And today it has evolved into one of the most richest sign languages in the world. We are indebted to Goethe, to early deaf pioneers, French, for the head start they gave us, and for the conditions where to the United States that have nurtured the ASL. We are still in the introduction, and I feel very tired and angry, but I will finish this for the viewers, if there is one. Sign vocabulary of sign language. A sign is a gesture or movement that conveys a concept. Each sign is made with a specific hand configuration or hand shape, placed at various locations on or near the signer's body. The hand shape, movement, or location change. The meaning of the sign also change. Signs are the basic semantic units of sign language, much as words are the basic semantic units of spoken language. So we have words and we have signs. Very good. The signs of ASL are formed with one hand or two hands. When a sign is formed using only one hand, the hand used is determined by the signers. That's a new word we have to keep in mind. Nature dominance. The same is true for the two-hand signs, in which only one hand moves. The hand that moves is called the dominant hand, while the other hand is called the passive hand. The illustrations in this dictionary show models with the right hand dominance. Two-hand signs can be produced in one of three ways. So we have these two-hand signs can be produced in one of three ways. Just to give you a head up, that these people that are practicing hand are their right hand is the dominant one. Number one, both hands form identical hand shapes, and both hands move. Number two, both hands form identical shapes, but only the dominant hand moves. Number three, the hands form different shapes, and only the dominant hand moves, while the passive hand is restricted to the limited set of hand shapes. We can see number three is moving the dominant hand with a little movement of the passive hand. Let's see this picture here. Answer. Hands move parallel to each other. So if we want to ask somebody answer, what's your answer? It's like saying a cool move that kids use is to say, what's your answer? But hands move opposite direction. If you want to say but, you have to say like an X movement. Some people would say but. Some people do it like I don't agree. But here in ASL it is showing the two palms upward and saying that I don't, but instead of I don't agree. In the third picture on the left bottom of this portrait, we can see the variety and alternative movement. What is the meaning of variety? I really don't know. Hands alternate movement. And this is like moving one hand in one direction and the other hand pointing to the ground, and the other is doing the opposite. Clean hands have same shape, only dominant hand moves. And this is the indication of cleanliness. It's like washing your hand, but only your fingers with your fingers. Washing your hand with your fingers. I can say last move and last sign here. We have it, and we will finish this lesson and lecture. And we will do some stuff like that in the future, like showing hands, showing ASL, maybe drawing, maybe doing other stuff. Of course, drawing needs a lot of effort and time consuming, and of course, knowledge and learning process. That will take so much time. Therefore, we would do many easy stuff like reading simple books like this one more often than drawing and more often than animating. So that one is called influences. Passive hand acts as a base. And it's like saying you are dropping something on your hand with your dominant hand. What is the meaning of influence? I think it means that there is a contraction, or there is an effect of somebody on another.